Hiya, nerds. This is a video I've been wanting to do for a while, and there's never been a great time. It's not a great time now. If you can see this, there are hundreds of Ninja Turtles weapons, and as you can see, a bin of Ninja Turtles comics underneath in front of me. I'm just in a mound of stuff, and there's not really a good time to do a video, so I've been kind of putting this off, but I just sold this. And I've been wanting to talk about old school D&D for a while. And so if you are here for comics, we'll be back to comics soon. And don't be mad at me, because YouTube is already mad at me, because YouTube likes channels to be a very narrow niche. And if you explore other topics, they kind of punish you for that. So they've already kind of punished me for talking about D&D before and getting off the topic of comics. So you don't need to be mad at me. YouTube's already mad at me. You can just skip this video and come back when I'm talking about comic books. But I hope you'll stick around, because I want to talk about really old school D&D. And now's the time, because I just sold this. I am at the point in my collection where I'm okay with owning things for a little while. And so I'll buy a collection and I'll pull a few things from my personal collection. And then other things I'm happy to let go. And so I bought a large collection of old school D&D stuff, actually a couple, and I pulled some things from my personal collection, and then I thought, okay, well, I'm going to send some other things to a good hole. But I'm going to miss this. I liked owning this for a while. This is an old school Metamorphosis Alpha. And so this is, as you might not be able to see, but $5 TSR rules. So this is from the 70s. Early years of TSR, the D&D company. Gary Gygax. This is by James M. Moore, but Gary Gygax has the intro. Someone purchased this, so I want to send it to them in the condition I promised. So I'm not going to open it and flip through and accidentally bend it on a Ninja Turtle. But I did want to show this. So if you're interested, this is... science fiction was leaking into fantasy rules. And so this is a part of a D&D history, really of role-playing game history, Metamorphosis Alpha. And when I do put these for sale, gosh, they get offers so quickly, because they're just rare and they're interesting and they're cool. And the rule sets have certainly advanced since then. And, the games we play today are more sophisticated and elegant, and these are often pretty clunky, but man, these were concepts at the time that were blowing people's minds and were pretty exciting products to come on the market. It's always important to remember your forefathers and the contributions they made. So this is really cool, and I want to show you some others that are just really deep cuts and strange things. So this is White Bear and Red Moon. And this is the way things used to come before, and you'll see there's a lot of just like little cardboard pieces, a couple rule books. There's a map here, but then in the late 70s, early 80s, you had a lot of other games like in addition to D&D, right? And so today, D&D folks they're mad, and they're like, we're going to play other games, and we're going to play Pathfinder, and we're going to go to Kobold Press, and everyone's making their own like system, and that's all part of the competition that was around since the late 1970s. And D&D turned out just fine then, and it'll turn out just fine now, because people like to play D&D, but people also like to play other things. And so the truth of the matter is if you're a gamer, you probably have multiple games. And so I imagine some young D&D players would also have stuff like this that, again, late 70s, early 80s were just a big part of the D&D lore. Of course, there was Dungeons and Dragons magazine. Dragon magazine was a little player boost, player aids, that sort of thing. Dungeon magazine were extra adventures. I always loved Dungeon because it was those extra adventures. But from the pages of Dragon magazine, this was, I think, in the issues in the 60s. You might have to correct me in the comments, but this is Quest for the Midas Orb, and this was quite famous. It was it's quite popular and kind of spread. You know, there wasn't the internet then, so it was just folks would write letters to one another, shocking, and they would kind of gather in person in the community, and word just traveled person to person. But this was, they had contests to come up with new stuff, right? And Jenny Good won 3rd place, and they put this as an insert into Dragon magazine. And so when I had this collection, there were a couple of these pulled out. They had kept the insert because it was so good. And so way back in the day, again, late 70s, early 80s, the nascent years of Dungeons and Dragons, we talk about these, creative contests nowadays. They were around back then as well, and they would be inserted into Dragon magazine. Just a couple more. In fact, just one more that I want to talk about. And I took this out so I could show you a little more closely. This is Monsters. Folks might be familiar with the Tunnels and Trolls system. This was 1976, and you can see the artwork style at that time in 1976. This is the first edition, and it says, a fantasy game providing equal time for the monsters. Edited by Steve Jackson, who went on to produce Steve Jackson Games and became, one of the legends in the industry. Jim Bear Peters did the Monster Glossary. Ken St. Andre did the writing, and it was from Metagaming Concepts. And so this was, I love it, a fantasy game providing equal time for the monsters. So that type of innovation that was coming even in the late 70s and 80s. As you can see here, 40 pages. That was the system. That was what you got. That was all you had. And you had black and white artwork, and you can see it's the typeface just typed up on a typewriter. and very simple production laid out, very simple artwork, but then it would talk some about the game master there. Again, very simple artwork, and this is what you got. And let's see, you can flip through and just see at that time there were a lot of charts, right? Costs and range and those sort of things would be illustrated in that manner. And on this, the feat was called the whammy, the double, the old dread, the poor baby, curses foiled, dispel, blasting power, just really fun stuff. And again, this was kind of a legendary third party product that, again, in those early days of Dungeons and Dragons, a lot of new systems were popping up, a lot of different styles to play, some really deep cuts, and then also some big contest winners, like straight for D&D. So it was a really interesting time. I love having this old stuff. I love owning it. It was fun for me to own this just for a little bit because this is such a rare and interesting product. But I'm also happy to get a new home and for a collector that really cares about this history of role-playing games and Dungeons and Dragons and all those other fun things that just seem so old and quaint, but at the time were just revolutionary and innovative and just really cutting edge. And so comic book fans, I will be back to comic books soon. I just wanted to take a little diversion to talk about some really neat products from the history of Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games. All right, nerds, you take care.